Welcome to episode number 7 in our community podcast, Bridging the Gap. In this episode, I host a dear community member who joined our community recently, Rabbi Lazarus. Rabbi Doron moved to South Bend with his family this August to be involved with the Midwest Torah Center. He has been involved in a number of organizations and activities, including Frontline Jewish Outreach, in addition to running his own sleeping therapy practice. Doron is also two-time author, noted speaker, and avid outdoorsman. Thank you, Rabbi, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Chaim. Thank you for having me.
So how are you these days?
I am doing great. I mean, it's certainly challenging in general. They're not the easiest times, but hanging in there and trying to be the best we can to keep the community up and running.
What actually brought you to move to South Bend and become a rabbi of Midway Torah Center?
That's a great question, Clay. Thank you. So it's definitely multifaceted. For 7 years of my rabbinic career at the beginning, I was primarily doing outreach work. So we were working with college students and young professionals from a variety of backgrounds, and I really loved that work. I really loved engaging people with little to no Jewish background, and learning with them and taking them on trips and running events for them. And I think at a certain point, there came I guess not a challenge or a frustration, but I almost kind of developed the desire to really want to make a community that people could grow long term. I felt that, certainly in one's initial, exploration phase of Judaism, it was very exciting. But oftentimes when one, so to say, would, become at any religious observance, they would kind of land there and they would kind of fall into their comfort zone. And I felt this for myself, myself included. I always really desired to be on a lifelong process of growth. And yet the challenge of doing that, just practically speaking, was something difficult. So, the idea of kind of creating a growth-oriented shul, really where the community could be coming from all different walks of life and all different backgrounds, the people that wanted to grow together and pray together and learn together and, celebrate together and all of that, that was something that was always kind of a dream of mine, in the back of my mind. And, there was a number of reasons that we were looking to leave Chicago at the time. Certainly, our family under quarantine, being raised in a more urban environment was definitely one of the catalysts. And when we heard about the opportunity over here, some of our good friends were out here and they told us about this situation, we thought it was going to be a great fit, and indeed it is.
So in Chicago, you were also a rabbi in a synagogue, or did you do something else?
Never. In Chicago, I was really working with Russian young professionals. There was an organization there, J-Life, and that's who we were doing. So, mainly just running kind of more, out of synagogue kind of programs.
Okay. Oh, so that's cool. So it's actually the first synagogue that you're actually leading.
Yes. This is our first pulpit position, and it's definitely a growth process. Obviously, coming and joining the community in the middle of the COVID crisis, there are definitely many people in the community I've never even met in person. So really, we hope for the day that we're really able to to take off. Now we're kind of in survival mode, obviously, in every sense, but we're really we're in it for the long term, and we like to see the community grow and to be as vibrant as possible.
Do you have a vision for Midwest Torah Center? Did you imagine, where do you see the synagogue or the community or the synagogue in, 5 years from now?
It's a great question. It's definitely coming out here. The facility is beautiful.
I know.
It's not a nice piece of land.
So big, and the yard and everything.
Right. We definitely have the resources here, and also the manpower. There's so many wonderful families that are involved in the community that volunteer of their time and their energy, and to really make it happen. So my goal, my dream of really any synagogue, this one in specific, was that it would be somewhere that everybody can feel comfortable, from the black hat Orthodox to someone completely unaffiliated off the street. And they would be welcome. They would feel that this is a place for them. It would be a warm and friendly environment. They felt that they had their place in the community. They felt connected to other people in the community. They felt that they were engaged on their own level. They were challenged and encouraged to grow and ask questions and learn and develop. That was really my goal, and I
Mhm.
that's obviously, in 5 years, obviously, I'd like to even in 5 months, I mean, really, I would say right now, probably 2/3 of our crowd that normally comes to the Midwest Horror Center is not there, and for
Right.
every rightful reason, people have to protect their health and protect their families, and I totally understand that. So,
Yeah.
although your goals are noble, 5 years, so in 5 months, I would certainly, I certainly hope that at least the vaccine is widespread at that point, and people feel comfortable being back in person, and obviously we can really get things up and running, both in terms of services, social programs, holiday programs, kids programming, learning events, and understanding that we'll probably always continue to do some things online. Just the
Mhm.
reality, I think it's definitely changed the way that our world interacts and does business, but we're really hoping to create a real kind of vibrant hub, and also to do beyond work in the community beyond our immediate South Side neighbors, and to really
Mhm.
try to engage the overall South Bend community at large.
I think that's something that is pretty new to do this kind of vision to do outreach outside the Jewish community or outside your small like synagogue community.
Sure, it's definitely something I myself was not raised, observant, and I appreciate that people are open to sharing ideas in a non-judgmental and a friendly and an open-minded kind of way. I think even in a place like South Bend that doesn't have the hugest Jewish community in the world, I think there's a lot of people that just they want to learn in their own place. They want to feel connected. They want to feel engaged. And I think that's really kind of hopefully part of our mission statement over here, that we know who we are, we're proud of who we are, but we also feel very very confident and comfortable engaging people from all walks of life and all backgrounds, and growing together. And I think really that's what it's all about.
Where did you grow up and in what family? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I grew up in San Diego, California. Nice, warm, sunny beach weather. And when it's like 19 degrees here, people are like, "Why did you leave San Diego exactly?"
Oh my God.
Um, my parents are South African, and I think in a lot of non-American countries, like my wife's British, you're from Israel, so a lot of people in say non-American countries are culturally Orthodox. So like they'll go to an Orthodox synagogue, and they'll be traditional, I think what we probably call them in America, but they're
Mhm.
not necessarily fully observant. And that's kind of how my parents
Yeah.
were raised, as most South African Jews were raised. And then when
Mhm.
they moved to San Diego, some, I guess, what is it, maybe 40 years ago now, they naturally kind of fit into the conservative movement. We
Mhm.
were traditional. I went to like a conservative community day school growing up, and that's just, we knew a lot of the traditions and the customs, and we had regular Friday night dinners. But in terms of kind of specific punctilious observance, that it really wasn't that. And in my own journey, I kind of went away from Judaism as a young
Mhm.
person, as a kind of post bar mitzvah. I was kind of checked out. I did not really like religion. I did not really like synagogue. I didn't really connect with any of that.
Mhm.
And then it was really something that only later in high school and early in college, I kind of carved my own way and found my own path to something that I really felt inspired to be able to be part of.
What brought you back to this path of Judaism and being more observant?
That's a great question. It definitely wasn't one specific point. I think certainly there were influential moments. I mean, even, growing up, I don't know if I knew any Orthodox Jews. I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
look, there were a lot of people that were traditional, and I'm sure I've heard of some, but it wasn't something that I had a lot of exposure to, or knew a lot about. I remember when I must have been maybe 14 years old, one of my best friends in high school went off to Reform Jewish summer camp one summer and came back
Mhm.
Orthodox, and it was the most bizarre, and we were all like, what happened to you? Like, what went on over there?" That was just like a very bizarre experience. And so that was kind of like my first, like, we were kind of I learned about religious Judaism from him and his journey as
Wow.
a teenager, kind of going about that, which was definitely interesting. And then I think more for myself, I remember just even I was part of BBYO, which is a fairly kind of non-denominational youth group, and
Mhm.
there were just some guys that were members of Orthodox synagogue. So like every month we would go to a different synagogue, and I had my first exposure to an Orthodox synagogue, which to me was just, it was different. It was very out of the box. It was not what I knew growing up. And it was interesting. I'm like, who are these people, and why do they believe what they believe, and why are they so passionate, and why are they swaying and shuckling all the time? And it was just, it was something that was, it was intriguing to me. I was a very inquisitive young man. I asked a lot of questions, perhaps more questions than I should have asked. But to me, life had to make sense. Religion had to make sense. And if I was going to do it, I really wanted to do it 100%. I didn't want to do anything in mediocrity and just, kind
Yeah.
of just go with the flow. So I started exploring a lot. I started asking, big questions, about what is the purpose of life? Is there an afterlife? Is there a God? Did God communicate with humanity? Is the Torah true? Is the oral Torah true? How do we know tradition? Like all these just kind of very, very fundamental philosophical questions. These things were
Hmm.
were interesting to me. And, I found that Orthodox Judaism really, it kind of played a very novel approach that I had never really heard of. It really had a deep spiritual philosophical side to it, that I really was able to connect with, and also I guess an intellectual rational side to it, very almost a hyper intellectual rational side to it, of the way that they study and Jewish laws derived, and the interpretation of things. And so I guess it was all very intriguing, and also seeing people that were leading an observant Jewish lifestyle, and they were incorporating Jewish values and Jewish ideals, and that was able to enhance their life and enhance their family, enhance their children, and ultimately to carry on Judaism to the next generation, because that was something that I was very proud of being Jewish. When I was 17, I traveled to Poland on the March of the Living, which is a very
Hmm.
influential thing. And then the next year I was in New York on a New York trip, and the next year I was in Israel. So, definitely around that 17, 18, 19, there were a lot of trips that I took that were kind of influential on helping me, just kind of gain a vision and a perspective of what Jewish community and what Jewish history was all about. And
Hmm.
when I came back from Israel when I was 19, I decided to commit to keep Shabbos.
Your time in Israel was actually the time of like the college time you did, or was it a separate time? What did you do? Because I know you lived in Israel for a few years.
Right, right. So my first time going to Israel, I was probably, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years old. I was a kid. My parents took us on vacation, and it was great. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was really, I had a great trip. I mean, obviously at that age, there was just like so much to absorb. It wasn't any like one take home lesson. Like, wow, that was an amazing trip. I went to New York and went to Europe on the way before. Like, it was just a real cool sightseeing, see everything, experience. My father is a history buff. See, he loves,
Mm.
the archaeology and the history, and, all these kind of things. It was great. We all in all had a good time. And then the next time I went back, I mean, the truth is I was actually supposed to go back to Israel on the March of the Living, but
Mm.
that year was 2001. Normally the march is a week in Poland and then a week in Israel. And that year was 2001, which was the height of the Second Intifada, you probably remember.
Mm.
And it was a very, very dangerous time. I mean, even looking back, I mean, living in Israel, there's obviously dangerous times, and there's always threat of war and terrorism. But, in that time
Yeah,
period, there was, the
it
bus
was a big
bombings and
wave.
the restaurant bombings. I mean, it was horrific. People were just getting blown up in the streets every day. It was very, very sad.
Yeah.
And the Israeli government actually told the march that they don't recommend that they bring troops at this time. They can't guarantee their
Wow.
safety. And so there were some groups that went on their own accord, but our group ended up going to Germany and to I'm sure they want one other, Spain. We ended up going to Germany and Spain, which is very anticlimactic, because really the
Mm.
whole goal of March of the Living is you go to Poland and you see the ashes of the Holocaust, and then you want to get inspired after that. You want to go see Jewish hope and Jewish renewal, and then take
Right.
you to Spain. Spain is beautiful, but it was.
What did they do in Spain?
Oh, we just toured. I mean, there's obviously a lot of Jewish history in Spain. There was
Mm.
hundreds of years of Jewish history. So, we
Right.
did the regular touristy things, and we studied some of the Jewish history. We went to Madrid and Toledo and Barcelona.
Mm.
And, we just toured a little bit around there. But nonetheless, Israel is really where our heart was. And then when I came to college, my first year after freshman year, I was in Israel for 4 weeks, and that was kind of part of my Jewish growth. And then I loved it so much, I ended up going there for like a year-long program after college, which turned into 7 years, and then we came home after that.
And then you met Trudy in Israel?
Metroidvania, right, right. Both of us have very similar life paths. Her growing up in Luton, England, but nonetheless, kind of intersecting, growing up with a similar background, kind of having a religious awakening around the same time, coming to Israel at the same time, obviously not knowing each other at that time, and then both of us, after being there for about a year and a half, her best friend got married to a good friend of mine, and after they got married, they set us up, and that was the rest was history.
Great. That's a really great story. You actually came from Chicago to here, and I wanted to ask you, could you tell the differences between the Jewish community in Chicago and the Jewish community here? What are the different challenges that you see that those two different communities have?
Chicago is definitely one of the largest Jewish communities in the country. It's a very large Jewish community. Even in terms of the observant community, there are thousands of families, and it creates a lot more resources. But in my opinion, it also kind of creates more challenges. And because obviously, if you're in a community with thousands of families, chances are you're simply not going to know everybody. And it's just,
Right.
it's impossible. There's just people moving in and out. There's so many people of so many, different demographics all over the community. And there's West Rogers Park, and there's Skokie, and there's Lincolnwood, and they're really just all over. And so it creates an environment. It's just human nature, for not better or worse. But it's just, when you go into a synagogue, you don't know everybody, because
Right.
nobody knows everybody, and people travel around. They go synagogue hopping. So it doesn't have that kind of like, oh, you see a new face, everyone rushes over and welcomes them and sees them. It just because everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Obviously, there's a lot of family history over there, and people are, again, not in a non-friendly way. People were friendly, but it just has that large community kind of feeling. There was a number of schools, from even within the Orthodox community, 3 or 4 elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. And so in a certain sense, in a good way, obviously, people can pick exactly where they feel comfortable, but in a certain sense, that kind of compartmentalizes the community. It kind of puts people in a box. So I go to this synagogue, and I send my kids to that school, and it just kind of it creates not unnecessary divisions. Obviously, they're necessary, but it creates lines and borders and divisions within the community. And it's great. Obviously, they have amazing kosher restaurants and many community resources, and many outreach organizations, and many
it's easier in a
acts
way.
of charity. And right. No, certainly easier in that respect to lead an observant lifestyle. You can decide to go out for sushi. You can decide to go out to steak. You can
Like
decide to go out to
living
this.
in Israel in a way. Like you don't need to think
Right.
about it. You can just can go anywhere.
Right. Right. Definitely. It definitely has that advantage. I guess obviously it depends on personality. A lot of people like it. A lot of people like living in Brooklyn and in Lakewood, and they love that kind of big Jewish kind of world kind of feeling. I guess perhaps from my background from San Diego, and myself coming from a non-observant community and not having any family here in the Midwest, I really just prefer the kind of small town Midwest feeling, I think, for a lot of reasons. I mean, I happen to think that South Bend is it's a beautiful place to live, Jewish or not Jewish. It's a very nice town. People are remarkably friendly here. It just, you just kind of, the values on the street, you just feel that people are nice, upright individuals. And again, obviously every city has issues. I'm not saying it's perfect, but by and large, it's a wholesome place to be. It's beautiful. I love the parks along the river. It's a very kid-friendly city. It's very green and hilly. So like I think just that alone is kind of nice. It's definitely not have to fight for parking anywhere you go, and it's really
So much
beautiful.
parking.
Right, so much parking. But in that capacity, in terms of the Jewish community, I think being part of a Jewish community that is small enough that people are really looking out for each other, they're really getting to know each other, they're really, kind of creating that warm environment that when somebody new does walk in, everyone knows who the new person is, and there's a very welcoming, and really wants to grow together, and there really is that kind of almost tight-knit sense of achdus that you do find. And you also, I think there is a certain there's a certain character trait. There's a certain almost a niceness, a chayin, so to say, if no better words, of the people that are here. And I think that passes on to the children. I think you see that in the next generation. And again, no guarantees. Every family is unique, but I think by and large, the kids grow up here normal, balanced, healthy, with a strong sense of who they are, but also a strong sense of respect for the outside world. So I think that's a nice balance. And the fact that there is a day school over here that is fits the umbrella of the entire community. And yes, there are different synagogues, but not so many. People really hopefully try to put those things on the wayside. And also what the federation is doing with having events, the Hanukkah event and many others that really kind of unite people from all walks of life and all backgrounds, I think is something that's very beautiful and very unique, and it's really a privilege to be part of it.
Yeah, I think it's nice here that every person has the synagogue he feels more affiliated to, but then there's also the Jewish Federation is kind of a roof on top of everyone that kind of brings everyone together. A lot of people know each other also outside of the synagogues, not only in the synagogues. So I think that's really beautiful here, in my opinion.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's something that's even when I had the fortune of speaking with Moshe Kruger, even when I was in Chicago before we moved out and we had the opportunity to chat, I could tell he was a very unique personality. It's not an easy job running a federation and try to keep everyone happy with so many,
Especially now.
right, especially now, right, with 2 Jews and 3 opinions, and now it's 2 Jews and 25 COVID opinions about what we should do in any given crisis. But he's really someone that is acting selflessly on behalf of the Jewish community, and has the background and has the personality that really wants to bring people together and wants to unite people. And I think the whole staff of the federation really gets behind that and really appreciates that mission. So definitely it's something that's unique. I've definitely been part of federations that, for better or worse, are somewhat alienating to different members and sectors of the community. But I think the Federation in South Bend is really doing a great job, keeping everyone on the same roof.
So you're also a sleeping therapist, which is very unique and very interesting when I first heard about it. You can tell us about this in general, but I also wanted to ask you, how has COVID affected sleeping disorders?
It's sleep is something that's very interesting to me. It's very I'm very passionate about it. My background from UCLA, I originally wanted to be a doctor. That was my father's a doctor, and growing up in San Diego, a young Jewish man could do whatever he wants with his life as long as he goes to medical school or law school. He can do whatever he wants as long as you're a doctor, you're a radiologist, pulmonologist, cardiologist, whatever you want. It's like with a doctor. If you can't make it in medical school,
any
you
type
go to law
of doctor.
School. Right, exactly.
Doctor or any type of lawyer.
That's right. And if you can't hack either of those, you can become an accountant, but don't tell anybody. Those are kind of that was the social norms. And so, look, I did have an interest in medicine, and in college, I studied psychobiology, so it was kind of a cross between neuroscience and psychology. And to me, more on the human side of behavior, that's what really interested me. I wasn't as interested in the hard science and the pharmacology and the immunology. Obviously, that's important. I have great appreciation for doctors and research scientists that are involved in that side of the equation. But to me and my personality, I really appreciated engaging with humans and creating a real relationship with them. And so it happened to be that really my path took me from UCLA studying psychobiology to then really wanting to become a rabbi as my religious fervor and passion developed, and really wanting to turn that into a career. And I guess interestingly enough, I was never a great sleeper. And when I was in my 20s living in Israel, I actually had quite a challenging situation of insomnia. And I had a period that I was on sleeping pills, and I was desperately trying to get off of them. And it was not a very easy thing to do. And I was going to doctors and different psychologists and whatever, and it wasn't going. I was just getting more frustrated and more nervous. And I ended up, doing a lot of research into insomnia, into the way that the brain and the mind work, specifically regarding the sleep. Ended up training myself out of my own insomnia, and ended up becoming literally I would have been up the entire night if not for prescription sleep medication. Went from that situation to it wasn't overnight, but it took some time, but to become a sleeper that now I can fall asleep almost instantly. Even fairly quick after that, I was able to fall asleep quickly, and now I fall asleep so fast. 12 seconds. I don't even know how fast I fall asleep. But it was something that was very revolutionary to me, and certainly it's something that I'm very, very passionate about, because I know how challenging it can be for people that are struggling with sleep, whether it be apnea or snoring, nightmares, or insomnia, not being able to fall asleep, waking up. And sleep is such a foundational element of our physical and mental health that without it, it's almost impossible to be successful in everything else. It just gives our body and our mind and our soul and so much rejuvenation and so much life that, really it's this kind of this valuable foundational commodity. So, that was something that when I had done that, I was still planning on becoming a rabbi, but I had this kind of skill in my back pocket of like, I really, really like sleep. And so, I was sleep coaching, some friends and family here and there. And then, when we were moving out here, I thought it was really time, just in terms of, personal development and professional development to really kind of scale that and launch that into a full business. And so that's definitely been the challenge. But we hit the ground running, we moved communities, and I took on a pole position for this first time. And I started a online sleep consulting business, which has definitely been an adventure. It's exciting. It really is. And, for me, I think it's enjoyable. I like sleep coaching. I really, as opposed to, I think, a lot of Western medicine that's kind of become very regimented and very, obviously monetized. And, there's a very strict system with insurance. Being in the world of health coaching, it kind of allows me to step outside of that and, really spend a lot of time with people, really get to know them. And I think that's really what's necessary for a lot of sleep, clients, that it's not an easy fix. It's not a, quick 15-minute, visit, and then we're going to prescribe you something. I really, I have to understand. And I work very closely with people. I'll sometimes,
it's almost like being a psychologist, like it's somewhere in the middle between medicine and psychology, because it's a lot. I mean, sleeping have a lot with mental health.
100%. Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, it's sometimes a combination, but I would say more often than not, specifically with insomnia, it really is a psychological issue. And it's interesting, because sometimes, being a sleep coach is very rarely just limited to sleep. People, they have anxiety, they have OCD, they have depression, they have marital issues, they have this and that. Like you are kind of forced to become like their full range therapist. And obviously, I tell them if it's something that I'm simply not able to do. And, I have a network of other therapists and medical professionals that I'll outsource to, even in my practice. I have a weight loss coach and a naturopathic doctor, so we try to take like a full gamut of things. But definitely it does enable me to stretch just beyond sleep and really, understand what's going on in people's lives and, try to help them in the best way possible.
How COVID affected both mental health as you see it, but also more specifically sleeping disorders.
No, definitely. The pandemic has had so many wide-ranging effects. Just like you said, it's obviously taken this toll on the economy. It's obviously shaken up political systems and influenced people's political views. And it's, besides obviously the tragedy of the disease itself, which is not only, the suffering from its consequences, but its other health effects, and, but the consequences now of many people being out of work, many people being in isolation, many people being, just overall more nervous, more tense. That has almost like had this almost tidal wave ripple effect of mental disorders. Is certainly something that, even as I was speaking to a friend of mine in healthcare, they said just even the psychiatric wards are just overrun. There's just nowhere to put people. It's just such a challenging situation in so many regards. And certainly from my perspective, definitely seeing it on the anxiety side of things and how that affects sleep. People are, even let's say if their immediate nuclear family is stable, but they're watching the news, they're watching the civil unrest, the political unrest. They're
just
concerned
crazy
about
uncertainty.
Right.
Just crazy uncertainty.
Right.
That was something I experienced when I was in Israel, and so I went back to Israel by the end of March, and then I was watching the news every day, and I didn't know when am I going to be able to come back here. And just this uncertainty that you can't plan for the future, because I'm supposed to come back here, but then it doesn't seem like it's happening. So am I supposed to plan for the future? Where am I standing? Do I need to find another job? Do I need to stay at home and wait? Like, what am I supposed to do? And it's a lot of anxiety, and it's just.
Sure, 100%. And when people are at home more and they're not feeling as productive, they're not able to go out, the kids aren't able to go to school, they're just not able to have their normal routine, so that it just wreaks havoc on people's sleep cycles. They're just, oftentimes their whole schedule is thrown off. They're not really, our bodies need daylight, and our bodies need, fresh air, and they need like a routine that gives the body a very strong cue. This is day, this is time to wake up. And then you have the stronger day you have, the stronger the night night is, the body gets those cues of night. But when you're indoors the whole time and you really have no schedule, you can work whenever, it can really throw people off. So,
Right.
unfortunately, I've seen a lot of it, but, trying our best to help people with those issues.
And how much sleeping disorders is genetics or stuff like more physical, and how much is it mental?
I would say, when we speak about sleeping disorders, I think there's two kind of categories. There is the insomnia and the complications of that. People simply just the quality of sleep is not good versus, apnea and snoring, that the whole breathing pattern is off and that can affect the sleep. So, apnea and snoring is purely a mechanical issue. It involves just the way that the person's breathing, the way that their airways are closing down. And, that's something we deal with, purely on a physical, medical issue, so to say. Insomnia, I would say, is, in my experience, about 9 parts mental and 1 part physical. There obviously is a physical component to it, and for some people there are hormone balances, and obviously making sure that one's eating right and exercising right and getting the right vitamins and minerals. All those things are important, but by and large, I think that a large part of it, and there's obviously a close link between our mental health and our physical health. You can't separate the two entirely. When the mind is racing, when the mind is tense, it tenses up the body, it releases more cortisol. The whole body becomes, tightened up and stiffed and not able to, relax into sleep. But I think that when you get to the root of what those mental issues are, I think that's when people can really have their breakthrough, to be able to sleep properly as well.
Other tips you can tell our listeners to help them sleep better at night?
Sure, 100%. I mean, certainly the basics, which, everyone knows the basics, but very few people do them. It's like similar to dieting, everyone knows that, it's not great to eat donuts and ice cream.
Yeah.
But we do it, because that's what we do. So I think, I would say the number one culprit that I see with sleep is technology, that people are just constantly wired to technology. They're not giving themselves a chance to unplug, a chance to unwind. It's the anxiety that feeds itself. The anxiety says, well, check the news, check your email, check your Twitter, check. And somehow the anxiety convinces you that you'll feel more secure if you know exactly how many people died with COVID today, and you know exactly what's going on in the world crisis, and it gives you that false sense of, yeah, you're in charge of the situation. Now you understand, when in reality the anxiety is really lying to us. And the truth is that all that information, obviously, if there's information you need to know in a current situation, you need to have that power of knowledge. But by and large, feeding the anxiety, the anxious thoughts that it wants, is actually not going to make the situation better at all. It's going to make the situation worse. So even such a simple thing as an hour before bedtime, everyone knows they should do this, but very few people even actually do, to be able to turn off your computers, turn off your phones, turn off your TVs, and just give yourself the opportunity to unwind, because our minds and our bodies need that. It's very crucial. When you take stress to bed, that is the number one culprit of not getting a great night's sleep, not being able to fall asleep. The depth of our sleep, the nightmares and vivid dreams that come of that, waking up in the middle of the night. I think that's really, what we're coming to see. Obviously not eating very, heavy foods. Alcohol can also affect sleep. Obviously being in control of caffeine, especially in the PM. Having a sleep sanctuary, what we call it, that your bedroom should be cool and dark, and you're not bringing work into the bedroom. You're not bringing any, heated discussions into the bedroom. Like, the bedroom should just be reserved, for a quiet, calm place to sleep. And, for people to also have consistent bedtime and wake up time, I think that's certainly a classic one they recommend. I mean, again, not for everybody. Some people these things don't affect them, but for people that have more sensitive sleep cycles, if they're taking naps in the day, sometimes that can throw off their sleep cycle at night. If their sleep cycle is bouncing back between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., that's a huge fluctuation. And for a lot of people, that can throw them off. So to be able to get into a rhythm and get into routine until, the sleep cycle can be strengthened. And then, obviously there's a lot of other issues that go into it, but I think that's the basics that I always recommend to start with.
For years, I'm trying to think what my opinion about dreams and what do I think about it. It's actually coming from back then, from the Bible, when Joseph was able to say what dreams means, and it's something I'm thinking about when I have a dream that it feels very real and something very interesting is happening. I'm always trying to find the meaning to it. Is it something that you're also? Does it have anything to do with you? With what do you think about dreams?
Right. Dreams are a great question and a very, very interesting topic. Dreams, I would say, that are almost one of the most least well understood phenomenon in Western science. It's so hard to pin down. It's so elusive. It's so almost, ethereal. Really just like non-tangible. Like, how do you categorize your dreams? What do you do with them? I
What
believe
do we dream also anyway? Like what?
right. So there was a school of thought. I believe this school of thought is kind of getting pushed out of existence, but there was a school of thought that dreams are essentially meaningless and they're essentially, just kind of random blips of your neurons just kind of, pumping in and out. I believe that school of thought is actually getting fast overpaced and overtaken by a deeper school of thought that's doing there's something called actually the Dream Interpretation Institute, which I actually did some work with, and the I would say the up and coming school of thought that I think is really kind of taking the forefront of psychology is that dreams represent the depth of your subconscious. Now, obviously, there is a relationship between, if you're if you go to a baseball game and during the day and you dream about baseball at night, like it's obviously clear that correlation. And
Mhm.
most people, I would say, don't have to, remember their dreams or do a lot of dream work. But I think dreams become interesting in a few fold. Number one, if a person is feeling stuck in life, if they feel that they're suffering from certain mental health disorders, or they're suffering from just life challenges, they don't seem to have clarity, they don't seem to overcome. So
Mhm.
it's interesting because I believe that a lot of answers to people's solutions really come from within, and
Mhm.
sometimes if we are able to listen to our dreams, we can actually pick up what those answers are. So to kind of combine this with the Jewish perspective and a sort of metaphysical perspective, we understand that the subconscious is connected to the highest part of our soul, to the neshama, and the neshama, even when we sleep, actually goes the Kabbalah, the mysticism teaches us the neshama actually goes up to Shemayim and almost gets recharged by being close, by clinging to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then comes back to the body. But when a person sleeps, their neshama is actually their wisest self. It's almost the intuitive understanding. It's who they are in their deepest sense, and it can even understand things and have insight and perspective into things that even our conscious mind is not aware of. And sometimes when we're so caught in our conscious mind, trying to rationalize everything in a linear way, which is what our conscious mind does, we're actually not able to understand the depth of the situation, which the neshama now, deposited in the subconscious is able to do. So when we're able to bypass that, and the interesting thing is that comes out in our dreams. The dreams are not conscious. We don't consciously think about what to dream about, although there is some interesting work with lucid dreaming where a person can, in a certain sense, control their dreams. But on a basic level, our neshama, through our subconscious, speaks in our dreams. And it's only a question of whether we're listening. Now, some people have very vivid nightmares and very vivid dreams that they can't avoid and they just remember naturally. And
Mhm.
that's something that we work with to understand why are those things disturbing them. Usually, there's some unfulfilled part of their life that they're not addressing, and the subconscious almost tries to knock on the door, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, because the whole day it can't, but it does, you allow it to come out when you sleep. So to really understand what the interpretation of that means, and even if that's not the case, even if a person doesn't naturally remember their dreams, to make an effort to remember their dreams, and then to understand what their subconscious is telling us, and what to do with that information. It's certainly not a hard science in terms of like, red roses mean this and a black cat means that. Like I mean, it's not exactly that. You really have to work with the person based upon what those things. I mean, oftentimes we dreams in riddles and we dream in, kind of loose connected imagery. But to understand, for the person, like, what does a black cat mean to you? What do red roses mean to you? What is those colors and images and places and people? And what are those fears? And then, a person, when they start working on it, they start picking up the sensitivity. So I believe they're able to actually uncover a lot. And when you give them the tools to work with that, sometimes their dreams can be very revealing and really help them have a breakthrough and for something that they're looking for.
So are you writing your dreams sometimes?
I personally don't. I almost never remember my dreams, almost never.
Mm.
And to me, it's just for me in my stage right now, it's more important to just get a solid night's sleep. And but if I felt stuck or I felt there was something really bothering me, dreams are a place that I think I would go to. That's definitely a repository of wisdom and information that I think can really help people. And I think it's really interesting understanding the depth to the human soul and how it really interacts with us with sleep. Combining the way that Judaism has been describing it for thousands of years, and then kind of what I believe is the up and coming trends in psychology today. Rabbi Yosef Karo, who is the author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, the Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Eliyahu Kramer, who described firsthand the intensity of their dreams and how angels were able to come teach them secrets of the Torah. There's actually a book that written by Rabbi Yosef Karo called the Magid Me'asharim that describes what the angel taught him in his dreams. And these kind of mystical secrets is very hard to understand, but this was his, so certainly I think that the person, according to their level, the more that they're tapped into their neshama, they're tapped into spirituality, the deeper and more profound their dreams can be.
So I think we got to the end of the interview. And so I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you want to add or anything else you want to use this stage to say to the community.
Great question. So I would say, first of all, thank you. Thank you to the community for welcoming us here. There's been so many nice people. We've really only had positive experiences from all sides of the community. So, really to understand and appreciate what a nice place that South Bend is, and also that people, wherever you are, even people who are unfortunately physically isolated, there's so much work to be done. There's so many opportunities for both personal growth and communal growth, and reaching out to others involved in the community in hard times. This is challenging, but really to try to use this challenging time to be able to really connect with people and really be able to come out of our comfort zones and think about how many people in need could really use our help. Even a little phone call or a little gift or a little act of kindness, going shopping for someone, whatever it is. There's so many opportunities that are available today. So to really not lose sight of not to get buckled down and totally overwhelmed with the challenge, but really use this as an opportunity to grow. And certainly in terms of sleep and mental health, for really people to be their own advocates and understand that if you are experiencing a challenge, it's very normal. Don't feel embarrassed by it. Don't feel stigmatized by it. I would say that the person who's not experiencing any mental health issues, in the pandemic is the exception, not the rule. So it's certainly something that's incredibly common. And to be able to be your own advocate and to seek help, and to really understand that our minds are our greatest asset and our greatest entity, and we need them to be healthy, just like our body to be healthy. Certainly sleep is a big part of that, and to be able to reach out to help and to reach out to the resources available to be able to to get one in line, that one's not constantly living in a world of depression or living in a world of anxiety or living in a world of sleeplessness, because really there are a lot of, sometimes medication is necessary for certain things, but, by and large, there's a lot of work that we can do even without medication that can really help improve that situation as well.
Thank you so much for listening to episode number 7 in our community podcast, Bridging the Gap. I hope you enjoyed listening. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay tuned to our next episodes.
מודה אני לפניך מלך